Hello everyone, my name is Kathy and I am ordained as a Tibetan nun at the Tibetan Buddhist Society here in Europe. At the moment I am standing in the temple, and we built this temple in the year 2000 and it is a replica of a temple that you would now find either in southern or northern India, or indeed temples that exist in Tibet. So it's a large space dedicated for meditation and for study, and we have quite an extensive teaching program, of which is detailed on our website if you'd like to have a look at our website. So the main feature of the temple, of course, is the statue of Buddha Shakyamuni. The statue itself is in the style of Tibetan statues, handmade in Nepal by a Nepalese sculptor, and it is the largest Buddha statue of its kind in the southern hemisphere. The statue is of the Buddha, and the Buddha was born about 2,600 years ago in a place in India, Lumbini. It was India at the time, it is now Nepal. And he was raised to be a king in a royal family, and he decided to help all living beings, and he left the palace when he was a young man, and he went into the forests of India and he meditated, and it is said that he had a long retreat for 6 years, at the end of which he was enlightened. So the Buddha statue you're seeing now is of the Buddha as he sat under the big Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya in India, and it is a very familiar pose. The Buddha has his eyes half shut in meditation, very peaceful, very kind, very loving, and he holds a begging bowl in one arm, and the other hand is called the earth touching mudra, and it just touches the earth. He's wearing the robes of a monk, and he is sitting on a cushion of lotus petals, so you can just identify those. The statue is made of brass or copper, and it is gilded in a special process in India, Nepal, and it's gilded with gold. The face itself is hand-painted with gold in a very special technique, and the artists that made the statue came out with the statue and helped us put it together before it was finally blessed. We also had an artist come from India who did some of the paintwork that you see around our temple, including the face of the Buddha, which is one of the holiest parts of the Buddha's body. You would think that the statue was empty, but it is traditional in Tibetan statues to actually fill the statue with sacred objects and to bless the statue when it's completed, and that's what we did. So the objects that go into this Buddha statue are actually mantras or prayers. They're all hand printed and then rolled up. There are 25 different prayers in that statue that you can see, and altogether in the statue there are over 6 million prayers. So it was my teacher Geshe Loden, whose photo you can see here, Geshe Acharya Thupten Loden, who has since passed away. It was his belief that this statue blessed not only this temple and the property and anyone that came into the centre, but it also blessed the surrounding suburbs and environment, and it was his belief that it blessed the whole of Australia. So it's very revered as a holy object and filled in the traditional way. Not only were there prayers, but there's also a one long pole of sandalwood going from the base of the Buddha to the top, the Yangxing, and around it are special relics which were given to this centre by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So some of the relics include little statues of Guya Samaja, Yamantaka, but also some very special pills created during the cremation of holy high lamas. Also there's Tibetan herbs, there's dried pine leaves from around the property, crushed incense, sandalwood, and so on and so on. So that statue is completely filled, and at the end of that process there was a consecration ceremony here in this temple when a whole gathering of monks and nuns actually consecrated the statue. So it's held up by snow lines, and if you can see on the camera, these are mythological animals which hold up the throne of the Buddha. The throne represents the Buddha's Jnanamakaya, or omniscient mind, the perfection of his mind, and the lions, there are 8 of them, are holding up the Buddha's throne, and they represent the Buddha's strength. And you'll see my teacher in front, and also on the altar very traditionally are offering lights. Now here in Australia we're in a CFA area, so we just have electric lights for safety reasons. Always silver coloured offering bowls filled with water in the morning, and then someone comes and empties them onto the garden in the afternoon. Always flowers, and always Geshe-la's throne, and a throne of which we keep ready for His Holiness the Dalai Lama if he chooses to visit us, which he did in the year 2000. Behind me is what we call a stupa, and it holds the remains of my teacher, Geshe Acharya Thupten Lodin. That is the cremation remains, which is traditional in Buddhist temples to do so. So before he died, he asked that his remains be shared amongst his temples and that they be placed in respective stupas. And this one was made in India. I actually visited the craftsman's studio while it was being made. It's all hand-beaten. Some of it is gold-leafed, and some of it is silver-leafed, and it is in a very particular and traditional shape. It represents the Bodhi mind, or the perfection of mind of the Buddha, and you can see that it's quite large, and it is again absolutely full of holy and traditional substances that go into a stupa. I think it took a small group of us about 5 months to actually collect all the substances that are necessary for the final consecration ceremony from some of the monks. You'll see that it's very ornate, and it has corals and other jewel-like ornaments on it as well. So it's very, very beautiful. So behind the stupa are what we call tankas. It's a Tibetan word for devotional painting, and these have been made by a master craftsman in India, and my teacher organised them to come to Australia some decades ago. So on the right is of Buddha Shakyamuni, and on the left is that of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And they're all very, very finely painted with beautiful colours, opacities and transparencies, and quite a lot of actual gold paint to give a certain finesse. The surroundings are of brocade, silk brocade, which has probably come from areas of India, Varanasi, for instance. Again, above that are what we call the Kangyur and the Tangyur. So while the Buddha was alive, he taught 84,000 teachings. He taught them actually wandering along the Ganges Valley, up and down. He never ever lived in a house, but he lived under the stars, or in the rainy season he would live in caves. And he taught to villagers and to people that he met on their request. in exchange for food. So 84,000 teachings were captured, written down, and eventually written from Sanskrit into Tibetan into these tangyur and kangyur, which are incredibly heavy because they're made of paper, they're dense, and it's traditional to have these texts available in the temple. Now behind me you can see the outside of our temple, and this building was built in about 1998. We started building, and originally this block of land was really quite a paddock. It was, for the previous owner, a one-hole golf course, and we had to level out the ground and make a reasonable garden space for the temple to sit in. The temple itself is very traditional to Tibetan temples that you would see if you visited India today, and it has very, very similar aspects and ornaments that you would see on those temples. So we have two roofs, and decorating the roofs at the top are three spires, and they're called victory spires, and they represent the victory of the Buddha over what we call more negative or agitated states of mind. On each corner on the top roof you'll see some mythological creatures called water dragons, and they actually protect the building, and you can see them on all four corners. Right in front is what we call the Dharma Chakra, and that is the wheel of the Buddha's teaching. As he turned the wheel, it is said 3 times, and throughout his life he continued to teach various sutras and tantras. So on either side of the wheel you can see a deer and a doe. One is male and one is female, and they represent what we call bodhisattvas, or the saints, the holy beings listening to the teachings in the form of a deer. So it is actually called Deer Park. On each corner of the building you'll see banners, and Buddhists generally like processions. They enjoy making processions, and you will see old photographs of Tibet, the Patala Palace in Tibet, with processions going right up the side of the building, holding silken banners which represent, sort of victory and celebration of the Buddha's teachings. And in front you'll see a portico, and around the top roof and the portico are lotus leaves, and the lotus leaves there's quite a few of them. They're all handmade, and they represent renunciation. So when we take on a spiritual path, we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. We also renounce samsara, and we gain a wish to for personal liberation, and in our temple's belief, liberation on behalf of all living beings. So on each corner of the portico you'll actually see 2 golden objects, and they are what we call, the Tibetans call nobus, or jewels. They're mythological jewels, and they just sort of sit on either end of the portico. Always in a Tibetan centre you will see the red part of the building with the blue lines, the white dots. This is all very traditional, and there are around the temple these golden medallions. So they depict various substances, and you can walk around the temple if you do visit us, and you can look upwards and see all the auspicious symbols. They've all been handmade in plaster, and they're gold leaf. So some years ago, before my teacher died, he asked that we could gold leaf all the ornaments, including the roof, and we haven't been able to complete that, but you'll notice on this very sunny day how very shiny they are. Some of them have been gold leafed, and they're very beautiful to look at. So we do recommend that you come to our temple, you visit, and with a holy mind and a peaceful mind you do kora clockwise around the temple, and it's very auspicious for you to do so. Now the portico, you'll see the two red doors, and many Asian temples have red doors, and ours are no exception. This is modelled on the Tibetan Works and Archives building in Durham in McLeod in India, and normally it would be wood carved, but we didn't have a wood carver in Melbourne, so we asked for an Italian master plasterer to come and make a mould, and he made a mould, and it's all been hand painted, which was quite a big job, both of them, making the mould and painting. You'll notice in Tibetan temples it's very colourful, very rich, quite ornate, and it's quite warming to actually come into the temple. On either side of those red doors you'll see 8 auspicious symbols, and they are on either side of the door because that is what is present in Maitreya's Pure Land, and it is auspicious to have those 8 symbols in that order on either side of the front door as they occur in the Pure Land of Maitreya. So our teacher, Geshe Lodin, when we built this temple, said that it was an offering from him to the people of Victoria. He said that he had a pension from the Australian government, that the Victorian people were really kind to him, offered him friendship, food, water, and in return he wanted to offer a beautiful example of a Tibetan temple for them to come and enjoy, not necessarily to meditate or study, but to just enjoy the garden as well. So he said that the environment around the temple was also an outdoor offering to the Buddhas. So it should be very pure, very beautiful, and something nice to look at and to visit. So this was a paddock, as I said before, but we converted it with topsoil, and a lot of people put a lot of effort into creating a garden. And it's particularly a garden around the actual pathway around the temple, so that not only are there roses and lavenders and other bushes, but we've also put in a lot of salvia plants which adorn the building. So my teacher loved roses, always did from when I first met him. If you wanted to please him, you'd give him a lovely bunch of a dozen roses. So when we came here, there were roses already in existence in beds because the previous owner had put them in. And we enlarged that until we've got a reasonably diverse rose garden. But he also liked robinia trees. So around the temple you will see these golden robinia trees, and they grace the whole environment. They're a lovely spot to have a picnic or just relax or give your eyes a little bit of refreshment. So this property is protected for animals. So we don't kill any animals. In fact, we support them. And my teacher often said that it was easier to look after and make animals happy, birds particularly, than it was to make human beings happier. So every day, as long as I can remember, even before we came here, my teacher would feed the birds on the property. And we have what we call a bird lawn, where food is put out every morning and fresh water. And we put out basmati rice and good bread, and we get flocks of birds here. And in fact we've got a lot of ducks, and they used to come up to the stairs where they would greet Geshe-la as he came down in the morning, waiting for their breakfast. So we get all sorts of native birds here. We get cockatoos, crows, we get rosellas, rainbow lorikeets. Today we had a whole herd of black cockatoos. We get all sorts of water birds such as ducks and all sorts of other birds, So it really is a sort of sanctuary for our feathered friends. So the Tibetan Buddhist Society has quite an active program of events that you can choose to join in. So particularly we have a teaching program in our temple, and we have introductory classes for those of you that might be exploring Buddhist spirituality on Sunday afternoons at 1:30. There's a small charge for the upkeep of the temple. We also have a more advanced class following that, the Path to Enlightenment, which is for people who already have some prior knowledge of Buddhism or maybe feel like starting with the Path to Enlightenment. We also have some more advanced classes for students who have taken initiations on the weekday evenings. So we also, a lot of our students also, some visit prisons to give sort of small teachings. We also have schools visit, we have nursing homes visit. So we have a fairly active program of community access as well, both here and going out into the local community. And we're called upon sometimes for various spiritual services and practices also. We also have, in the local community, there's quite a good deal of homelessness in Broadmeadows. So we have a charitable lunch every second week for those people living in the area, so they can have a hot meal. So this is one of the things that the centre has been providing for some years. And we also have a provision for providing nutrition for an after-school program in the Broadmeadows area as well.